The desert fell silent on the 9th of June, 53 BC. 20,000 Roman soldiers lay dead in the sand. But for 10,000 more, the nightmare was only beginning. They were stripped of their armor, chained together, and marched east, away from Rome, away from everything they knew. Rome never came for them. This was Carrhae, one of the worst defeats in Roman history. An entire army annihilated by an enemy Rome had barely taken seriously. But the strangest part of this story isn't the battle. It's what Parthia did with the survivors. Because they weren't executed. They weren't ransomed. They were sent somewhere no Roman had ever gone. And the last possible trace of them turns up 1,500 miles away, on the border of China. To understand how 10,000 Romans ended up in chains, you need to meet the man who put them there. Marcus Licinius Crassus was the richest man in Rome. He had crushed the Spartacus revolt. He ruled alongside Caesar and Pompey, but money wasn't enough. Caesar had Gaul, Pompey had the East. Crassus wanted a conquest of his own. So in 53 BC, at over 60 years old, he marched more than 40,000 men into Parthia, a vast empire covering modern Iran and Iraq. He expected an easy victory over what he assumed were disorganized horsemen. He was warned. Allies offered him a safer route through the mountains. Crassus chose the desert, the fastest path to glory. It was the fastest path to catastrophe. Near the town of Carrhae, in the open desert, the Parthian general Surena was waiting, with only 10,000 men. Crassus outnumbered him 4-1. It didn't matter. Surena's army was almost entirely cavalry. Horse archers circled the Roman lines like wolves, pouring arrows into the packed ranks, then retreating, turning in the saddle, and firing again mid-gallop. The famous Parthian shot. The Romans couldn't catch them. They couldn't escape them. The legions locked shields into the testudo, the tortoise formation that made them nearly invulnerable. But at Carrhae, it became a coffin. Arrows punched through hands and pinned feet to the ground. Roman commanders told their men to hold. The Parthians would run out of arrows. They always did. Then, over the dunes, came Surena's masterstroke, a caravan of 1,000 camels, loaded with nothing but arrows. Crassus's own son Publius led a desperate cavalry charge to break the encirclement. Hours later, the Parthians rode past the Roman lines, with his head raised on a spear. The army broke. Crassus was forced to the negotiating table, where a scuffle broke out. And the richest man in Rome was killed in the sand. What happened next became legend. Roman writers claim the Parthians poured molten gold down his dead throat, saying, "You thirsted for gold, now drink it." The final count, 20,000 Romans dead and 10,000 taken alive. By Roman law and custom, these men were now an embarrassment. A soldier's duty was to win or die. The Senate had refused to ransom prisoners before, and it would not pay for these. 10,000 trained legionaries, abandoned by Rome, and now the property of Parthia. So what do you do with 10,000 of the best heavy infantry in the world? You don't waste them. You use them. According to the Roman historian Pliny the Elder, the prisoners were marched 1,500 miles east, across the entire Parthian Empire, to a province called Margiana in what is now Turkmenistan, the edge of the known world. There, they were put to work as border troops, guarding Parthia's eastern frontier. Think about what that means. Men who had sworn an oath to Rome now stood watch on the walls of the empire that defeated them, defending their captors against enemies they'd never heard of. They were given local wives. They raised children who would never see Italy. The poet Horace wrote with disgust about Roman soldiers growing old in the service of enemy kings, married to foreign wives, fighting under foreign banners. For most of the 10,000, this is where the record ends. But there is one more clue, and it's the strangest part of the entire story. 17 years later, 36 BC, a Chinese army attacked a fortress at Jiji in modern Kazakhstan. Han Chronicles recorded something unusual. About 100 defenders fighting in a tight fish-scale formation, overlapping shields, locked together. In 1955, historian Homer Dubbs made a bold claim. Fish-scale formation was the testudo. These, he argued, were survivors of Carrhae, legionaries who had drifted east as mercenaries. Chinese records say the fortress's captives were resettled in a frontier town, a town later named Liqian, which may echo the Chinese word for Rome. Today, in that region of China, some villagers with green eyes and lighter hair claim descent from the Lost Legion. It's an incredible story, and it's probably not true. Most historians are skeptical. Fish scale could describe many shield formations, and DNA studies of the villagers found no clear Roman link. But here's the thing. No other account tells us how the story
All
ends.
things are in a state of
10,000
flux.
men marched east,
They are
and history
changing
simply
even as I
loses them.
speak.
33 years
This
after
observation
Carrhae,
must be
the Emperor
reported
Augustus
accurately.
finally negotiated with Parthia, and Rome celebrated wildly as its lost treasures came home. Not the men, the standards, the golden eagles of the fallen legions. Rome got its symbols back. The 10,000 soldiers who carried them were never coming home, and Rome had never really asked. But here's what's darkest of all. Capture by the enemy wasn't the worst fate a Roman soldier could face. Sometimes, the greatest danger came from his own comrades, sanctioned by Rome itself. That story is on your screen now.